You don't have to.
The time in Kingston, Jamaica and the rest of the Eastern Caribbean, it is now 8 a.m. In Memphis, Tennessee, it's 8 a.m. In Addis Ababa, it is 4 p.m. And here in the United Kingdom, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's time for Rastafari Revelation.
Every Saturday from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. on Spreaker.com, it's time for Rastafari Revelation, a one-hour talk show produced and presented by members of the Rastafari Alliance for Science, Technology, and the Arts. Coming to you live from the United Kingdom with news, views, reviews, previews, and interviews exploring the Rastafari movement. Rastafari Revelation, produced and presented by members of the Rastafari Alliance for Science, Technology, and the Arts, in collaboration with www.spreaker.com, the World Wide Web's #1 podcasting platform.
Behold how good and how pleasant it is for I and I to dwell together again on this podcast number 2 of the Rastafari Revelation, produced and presented by members of the Rastafari Alliance for Science, Technology, and the Arts. Today, your hosts are Ras Albert Williams
And Empress Tempe.
Good. Empress Tempe, good afternoon and welcome to the podcast for the second time. This is part number 1 for the 1st of June 2013. How are you today and what do we have in the lineup?
I'm great today, Ross Albert. And I'm just delighted to be here. I want to say hello out there to all the viewers. We got good response back from our first podcast last week, as well as our reflections. And Ross Albert, you know, I remember when we left off last week, I had 2 questions for you. I'm going to start them off now, if it's okay.
Okay, well, what we're going to do, we're going to answer your question about what is the meaning of Ras in the Rastafari. But before we do that, we want to hear a little bit of poetry.
Okay.
Because as you know, Rastafarians express their faith through poetry and song. So Rastafarians are known for their creative work. So stand by, we'll be with you in a short while, and we'll be in with some more poetry from Ras Albert Williams. With the time already moving down past 2 o'clock, it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Welcome again from the Rastafari Alliance for Science, Technology and the Arts. This one is called I Live.
I live, I live, yeah, Rastafari. No prayers, no mantras, no invocations, no whole mountains, no whole scriptures, no rituals, no conjugations, no rules, no vows, only a dread meditation. I live, I give, I love, I meditate, I contemplate, I dream dreams, I vision visions, I survive hard times, I overcome the oppression, I speak out against injustice, I forgive the oppressor man, I uphold all that is righteous, I condemn all that is wrong, I interpret sacred writings, I see the light, I follow. I follow lights because I live. Jah Rastafari.
Rastafari Revelation. And Empress Tempe, that was I Live by yours truly, Ras Albert Williams. And it spoke about, I and I being a Rastafarian in these times, carrying I and I dreadlocks and speaking the faith, walking day and night in the faith of Rastafari, Haile Selassie I Jah. Rastafari. So, getting back to your initial question about what Rastafari means. In the Ethiopian language and in the hierarchy, the imperial hierarchy, there are a number of titles that were given to members of the royal family. And Ras in the Ethiopian, in Amharic, means prince. Or you could say Duke, as we have the Duke of Edinburgh in England, which is Prince Philip, who is the wife of Queen Elizabeth. Ras was the prince in the Ethiopian realms. So when His Imperial Majesty, before he became emperor, he was known as Rastafari. Now, Rastafari is the Amharic pronunciation of the word Tafari. Now, when Rastafari evolved and Rastafari began to adopt the various I words, what we call the Iric language, that is changing certain basic structures of the English language, incorporating the I. They changed the last syllable, re, to I, so it became Rastafari and not Rastafari. And it all stems from the title of His Imperial Majesty when in 1930 he ascended to the throne as Emperor of Ethiopia and took on the name of Haile Selassie the first. And the name Haile Selassie means power of the Holy Trinity. And as you know, the power of the Holy Trinity is also the name of God.
Okay.
Yeah. So Haile Selassie, being the power of the Holy Trinity, he fulfilled the messianic prophecies of Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey, as you know, was a Jamaican preacher, publisher, a trade unionist who lived between 1887 to 1962. He traveled extensively in the United States and in England, in Panama, and other places in Europe. And he was responsible for the founding of the United Negro Improvement Association. And we'll be speaking a little bit more about the Negro experience in the United States with you, Tempe, shortly.
Okay.
So Marcus Garvey was one of the forerunners of the Rastafari movement. He, along with others in Kingston, began to preach this black consciousness, which of course appealed to the brethren and sistren in Kingston who were suffering horrendous treatments and horrendous living conditions in the ghettos of Kingston, and who were disillusioned with the established religion and the established society, and who saw it as being nothing more than an extension of the slave propaganda and the slave mentality with which the slave masters controlled their slaves. So in a nutshell, that is what Rastafari, how it started and where the word Ras comes on. So as they began to preach this black God philosophy, they became known in Kingston as the Rastafarians because they preach Rastafari.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. In fact, it thank you. It answers it beautifully. In fact, it leads into my second question. In fact, the second question I had was, is Rastafari a religion, or is it just a trend? And I asked that, Ross Abbott, because you have a lot of viewers and listeners who, like myself, may be new at coming into Rastafari. And that's one of the things that we bring to light on Rastafari Alliance for Science, Technology, and Arts. Is supposed to educate you and bring you to current. So,
okay, I think we had a problem there. We were actually not, our mics were not on, so I think our listeners most likely would have missed that long explanation about Rastafari. So I'm going to have to apologize and kind of repeat myself.
That's okay.
So let's just get a little bit of music in the background.
Okay.
Yeah, so as I was saying, Rastafari stems from the title of His Imperial Majesty before he was before he was crowned as the Emperor of Ethiopia. So Rastafari was the title that meant prince or duke.
Okay.
Now, as you know, in the United Kingdom, we have the Duke of Edinburgh, who is the husband of Queen Elizabeth. So his title is the Duke of Edinburgh. He's also called Prince Philip.
Okay.
So in the Ethiopian imperial realms, the crown prince or any son of the present emperor would be named as a Ras. Do you understand? So at that time, His Imperial Majesty's name was Tafari Mokonnen, and Rastafarians added the I sound at the end because in Ethiopian language it's Tafari. Yeah.
Okay.
But Rastafarians put in the I sound at the end because in incorporating the I from His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie the First. So instead of saying the first, which is a Roman numeral, they put in the I. So Rastafarians incorporated the I sound into a lot of the words that Rastafarians use in the philosophy. So Rastafari is really the joining of Ras, Prince, and Tafari, which again in Ethiopian language means the new flower. So Rastafarians became known as the Rastafarians in Jamaican society because he preached Rastafari. And Rastafari from then on blossomed. And as you know, Marcus Garvey was one of the forerunners of the Rastafari movement. He it was who preached that look to the east because a black king will be crowned and he will bring your deliverance. And that speech was made somewhere in 1928. So in 1930, when the coronation of His Imperial Majesty took place in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia,
Okay.
and that was November 3rd, 1930, the news, when it reached Jamaica, and when the Garveyites, as they were called at that time,
Okay.
when they saw the grandeur and the splendor of the occasion, with over 100 dignitaries and kings and queens and presidents from all over the world attending, and they looked again and they saw that the man that was being consecrated as emperor had the names of Haile Selassie, which means the power of the Holy Trinity, and also he carried the titles of King of Kings and Lord of Lords, which they had researched in the Bible and saw that these would be the titles of the Redeemer, as stated in Revelation. They also saw that this man was born in Ethiopia, which according to Bible legend is the birthplace of the human race. They said that surely this must be the man that Marcus Garvey was talking about.
Yes.
So they were very excited about that and began to search their scriptures even further and to say to themselves that this surely is the returned Messiah. Does that answer any of your questions about Ras?
Yes, it does. And because we had a little technical with the problems with the mic, let me reiterate to our listeners that is one of the things. Thank you, Ross Abbott, for explaining that in detail. That is one of the things that Rastafari Alliance for Science, Technology, and Arts want to do, is educate you and bring to light what Rastafari is and the meaning behind it. And I also want to just say that what I represent the voice of those like myself who are new to Rastafari and who hunger, who has that desire to want to know. And nothing that we talk about is rehearsed. That is one of the beauties in our show, is Ross Abbott has no idea the questions I'm going to ask him. And I have no idea what he's going to say except for learn and understand. But what you did bring to light is the second part of my question, which led into, was Rastafari a religion or a trend? And I asked that because I see so many people that will get into that wear dreadlocks, that has Ross prefix, that say they're Rastafari. And I just was wondering, and I'm sure other people are wondering too, is it a religion? For me, I look at it as a religion. And it's ironic how you explain that. It's ironic. And I have much respect for Rastafari, that the prophecies that Marcus Garvey and Haile Selassie had is documented. And if you read your Bible, whatever version, King James Bible, whatever version, you'll see it. And that brings into, does Rastafari have a Bible?
Okay, let me take it from the top.
Okay.
You asked, is Rastafari a religion?
Yes.
Well, ever since the Rastafarian movement took root in Jamaica,
Okay.
they were a very religious organization, or should I say gathering, you know.
Yeah.
Because most of the Rastafarians would have had some sort of Christian upbringing,
Okay.
would have been baptized into various churches. Jamaica is one of the islands in the Caribbean that has the most Christian churches. They would obviously have been influenced by their religion.
Yes.
And also because they used the Bible, the King James Bible, to find their calling, as it were. You know, the Rastafarians were truly a religious people. Now, in the 60s, the United College of Jamaica, which is presently known as the University of the West Indies, conducted a research into the Rastafari movement. Okay, and Rastafari has been the source of discussion and research for many researchers over the decades.
Yes.
And what some of the researchers have said, that Rastafari is a millennium organization, meaning that they looked forward to the rapture moment, to the time when the Messiah would return.
Okay.
Which brought them into the category of being a religious movement looking forward to the return of the Messiah.
Okay.
Rastafarians themselves shun away from referring to themselves as being a religion, because Rastafarians associate that word religion with being of a Babylon nature, you know, because it was through religion that the slaves were enslaved and brought to the West Indies. The boats and the vessels that the slave traders used were blessed by their various priests, and indeed even the Pope and Italy and other European countries owned slaves.
Okay.
You know, so they couldn't equate righteousness and holiness with a religion that endorsed slavery
And caused what?
and caused so much suffering.
Yes.
You know, with the black race. So Rastafarians categorically have a psychic resistance towards anything that describes them as religion.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, Rastafari is a new name. It's a new thing. You know, it cannot be categorized. It cannot be put into one category, because there are many Rastafarians from around the world that have various approaches to the movement. But one thing that unites Rastafari is the fact that Rastafarians see His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie as the living God.
All right.
The living God through which we seek His guidance in His words, in His life, and in His actions. You know, and we tie that in with various biblical verses that point towards His Imperial Majesty as being the anointed one. Rastafarians also see themselves as being part of a way of life.
Oh.
Yeah, because Rastafari is not just about what you believe in, but also how you act and how you interact with nature around you.
Okay.
What you eat, how you speak, you know, what you defend, human rights, you know. Rastafarians are very keen on human rights. They're very keen on nationality and race issues, you know, which are not part of organized religions.
No, it's not.
Organized religions don't go out of the way and speak out against human rights.
In fact, it's sort of the opposite.
Yeah.
They won't speak out.
Yeah, they kind of see themselves as isolated, various cults, various congregations, and they stick to their religious beliefs. But Rastafari is a lot further in their horizons. You see.
Let me say this, Ross Abbott, because how you're explaining that is very enlightening, and I want to share that in the United States. There are, like you say, I had never heard the word Rastafari or Haile Selassie. I had heard of Marcus Garvey and his preachings and his philosophies. But I will say this. I will say, again, much respect to the Rastafari movement for believing in a cause and fighting for it and bringing the word to light, because the teachings are evident all over the world now. It's not a local community, as I mentioned in our first show. It's a global. And so whether they say Rastafari, and I do think that it's opening up for the world more, but whether they say it or not, the meaning is very clear.
Okay.
So continue.
I'd just like to quote from the publication Dread, The Rastafarians of Jamaica by Joseph Owens, who was a Jesuit priest who lived in Kingston in the 70s and did remarkable research, following up from the research that the University of the West Indies did. And I'm going to read a short extract from his book on page 102. From a section called Return the Messiah.
All right.
And he says, according to the Rastafarian understanding of Christianity, only those will be saved who recognize the Messiah in his last coming. This final event, like the first, will be surrounded by the confusion and contradiction, and there will be a great testing and sorting out. The very rejection that the Rastas experience now at the hands of society is evidence to them that they are right when they identify Selassie as the returned Messiah. If their words were nonsense, people would pay them no mind. But such is clearly not the case. It is clear to all that what the Rastas announce now by word of prophecy will be proclaimed eventually by the forces of nature and the most recalcitrant of men. And that was a quote from a Rastafarian called Black Heart.
Okay.
And as I said, Joseph Owens did a remarkable work in his research on the Rastafari movement. But I'm afraid that we'll have to continue this perhaps in another podcast, because we're going down 27 minutes after 2 o'clock. At 2:30 we take a break.
Okay.
Before we get into part 2. So let us just take in a few bars of a track from, again, Albert and Tempe and the Winning Team Band. This one is called Slavery. And after the commercials, we'll be back with you with part 2. Tempe, any last words before we...
Well, I'm excited. You can see, and I just want to thank our listeners out there for your support. And do go to Rastafari Alliance for Science, Technology, and Arts, and let us know your thoughts. Let us know what you'd like to hear. We want to bring to you the best of the Rastafari movement.
Rastafari Revelation.
Saturday from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. on Spreaker.com. It's time for
Rastafari Revelation, a 1-hour talk show produced and presented by members of the Rastafari Alliance for Science, Technology, and the Arts.
Coming to you live from the United Kingdom with news, views, reviews, previews, and interviews exploring the Rastafari movement. Rastafari Revelation, produced and presented by members of the Rastafari Alliance for Science, Technology, and the Arts.
I think the ad is going on now.